Okay, very good. So we will continue our discussion on the second chapter. And today we are going to talk one of the most popular and often quoted verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, we had seen the verse 47 in the previous class. And today we will just do a quick recap of that verse and we will cover 48 and 49. A lot of you are yoga practitioners, but means you will see in these verses one of the most comprehensive definitions of yoga. So just to pick up the thread, the second chapter is a summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita, because the style of the ancient scriptures was usually the first chapters used to give an entire picture of the subject matter of the book, because at that point of time there was no printed book. So the index would be the first chapter. In the Gita, the first chapter is the problem statement, but the second chapter gives an entire picture of the topics covered in the Bhagavad Gita. So even in the second chapter, the first 10 verses restate the fundamental human problem that everybody is subjected to sorrow, everybody is subjected to suffering, and from verse 11 to 72 is Krishna's teaching. And the first portion of that teaching, which is from verse 11 to 37, Krishna is talking about the fact that what exactly is the nature of an individual. We saw that 3 dimensions of an individual was discussed in detail. There is a physical aspect of a jiva, which is known as the sthula sharira, and there is a subtle body, which is known as soul, and then there is an atma, which is means subjected to no change. The physical body has a limited duration or the longevity, whereas the subtle body has an extended duration, and the atma has no birth or death or modification. And we saw that why we are subjected to suffering is a wrong self-identification with the physical and the subtle body, when our real nature is real Atma, which is not subjected to any change. We try to identify ourselves with a gadget or a tool, which is the physical body or subtle body. And Krishna is saying that only through knowledge, this self-identity can be rediscovered. It is already is your identity, but we need to rediscover. So this was the topic that is covered in the first portion. And also in the first portion, Krishna clearly elaborated the point that whatever is the cause, there is no legitimate reason for sorrow. So this has been established from verse 11 to 30 from a spiritual perspective, and from verse 31 to 33 from a dharmic perspective, and from 34 to 37 means 36 from a worldly perspective. So this was the entire analysis of the second topic covered in chapter 2. And then on verse 37, he summarized the entire concept covered from verse 11 to 36. And then he said, so far I explained what needs to be done. Now I need to talk about how it means why we need to do, what we need to do, I need to explain. So that is what is the second portion. He said, see, how do you rediscover your self-identity? For that, you have to do a practice called yoga. And then he did a little bit of marketing about yoga. He said that there is no loss of effort here, and there is no lack of issue with the completeness, etc. And he also talked about that typically people read the scripture and they don't see the need for a focused mind, and also the scripture can mislead you with a lot of worldly benefits. The people who seek the heaven and such benefits through the spiritual practice or the worldly practice, means people read Veda and think that going to heaven is the greatest thing. Krishna called them as flowery words of the unwise. And then he's established the point on verse 36 that the scripture is useful only to reach a destination. The role of a scripture is only a roadmap. Vedo avedo bhavati, Upanishad tells. Once you reach the destination, there is no value for the scripture. So the scripture, you have to see that only as a means, not as an end. And the role of a scripture is to guide us or navigate to the destination. And once you reach the destination, the scripture doesn't have much value. So that is why he explained the point, when there is no water, a well in a river bed has a lot of value because you have to go there to fetch the water. But when there is a rainy season and the whole place is crowded with, means it's full with water, what is the value of that well? It doesn't have any value. So once you reach the destination, the scriptures do not have much value. These are revolutionary statements of the Bhagavad Gita. The role of a scripture is properly identified, and the role of the scripture is, or the scope of the scripture is limited only as a navigator. So that means if somebody talks bad about your scripture, you don't have to worry because the scripture is only a roadmap. So those we have seen. And then he started explaining what is karma yoga is, because that is the central theme of this chapter. So Anu, do you mind chanting from verse 47 to 50, if you don't mind?
Yeah. कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भूः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि योगस्थः कुरु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्यसिद्ध्योः समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते दूरेण ह्यवरं कर्म बुद्धियोगात् धनञ्जय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणाः फलहेतवः बुद्धियुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृतदुष्कृते तस्मात् योगाय युज्यस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Beautiful. So let's chant the verse 47 one more time, because that is the topic we are going to see. But before that, this 47 to 50 explains the Karma Yoga. The essence of Karma Yoga is explained in detail in the most comprehensive way. We had seen this last week, but since this topic is very important, and this is one of the most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita, we will do a little bit more analysis on this topic, and we will go to the next verses. From 48 to 53, in fact, you will see three popular definitions on yoga. What exactly is yoga is brilliantly defined in verse 48, 50, and 53. We will see that. So let's listen to Karmanyevadhikaraste once again.
कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भूः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि.
Those who don't even know Bhagavad Gita, they quote this verse, even without understanding the full meaning. And we had explained last week that a lot of people misinterpret this verse. How? They say, your right is only on the work. You should renounce the fruit of action, which is just impossible. Some people say you should not have an expectation of the result. That is also wrong. Practically, how is it possible? Imagine tomorrow morning you are getting up to your car to go to work. What is your expectation when you get into the car? The car should start. If you don't have that expectation, that is the most, I think Swami Dayananda used this word, sorry, a harsh language. He said, if that is the case, this is the most idiotic verse given by an idiot, with most idiotic person to the most idiotic person. So that's not the case. So we have to see what exactly it is. So we saw this meaning in detail, right? The first line says, Karmani evaha adhikaraha ste. Your choice, your commandment, or your control is only on the action. Second verse, Ma phaleshu kadachana. Once you complete the action, you do not have any control over the result. Third sentence, Ma karma phala hedurpuhu. Don't think that you are the author of the result, karma phala. Ma te sangos twakarmani. You are not, means if since you are not the authors of the result, do not get attached to inaction. This is like a sutra form, precise, concise, and gives a brilliant definition of the Karma Yoga. So we had seen several examples. Last week I saw dropping the phone. So let's take a different example today. Let's say that you are investing some money into some market. So let's say that you have $1,000. Would you invest to the market? Just think and answer me these questions. Would you invest that money to the market if you don't have any expectation on the return? Anybody does that? Think about practically. It's impossible. You are expecting some result. Let's say that you are expecting an 8% return or 5% return. And what you should do, what exactly is in your hand? You can go and do the research. Where am I going to invest this? Am I going to invest this in S&P 500? Or am I going to invest in a stock? Or am I going to invest in some fixed bond or government bond? What exactly is the market condition? How the market is performing? Should I just go with, say, Wells Fargo, or should I go with the Vanguard? All those information and due diligence, it is in my hand. So that is why karmani evaha adhikarahate. I do have the entire right, entire control, entire choice how I need to execute an action and what action I should undertake. Should I invest, and where, means how should I invest? So for example, I can just go and deposit that to a government CD. I may get 1% return. That's completely fine. So I do have that choice. What exactly is the action I should take? Should I invest that in a CD, or should I just keep that in a saving account where the FDIC insurance is there? Or should I just go and invest in a stock? Or should I even invest in a controlled way, right? In the mutual fund or some S&P 500 index or whatever it is. So that choice is in my hand. So now let's say that you made your investment. You picked up, say, a technology stock, a stock in a company, a startup in artificial intelligence. You believed that, okay, this company is going to go up very high next year. So after you do that, right, how that fund is going to be returned, is that in your hand? If that was in my hand, everybody would have been millionaires now. So once you invest the money, what exactly is going to contribute to the market, how that fund is going to perform, it is not in my hand. Some of them, it is in somebody else's hand, and some of them, it is completely hidden variable. So what you have to understand that the choice or control I have is limited to action, not the results. That is the second line. Ma phaleshu kadachana. You do not have any control over the results. Definitely, your action would be a contributing factor to the result, and you do have control and perform that as best as you can. So the third line, Ma karma phala hedurubhohu. Understand that you are not the author of the result. If I was the author, I would have authored 50% return for my investment. Why should I limit to 50, right? I should author some 500%. If I was the author, like suppose I go and buy a lottery ticket. If I was the author, I would have made my ticket first prize, correct? So that's the important. So you are not the author of the result. Definitely you are the author of the action, and that action may have an indirect contribution to the result. That's all you can say. So you do have control over certain places. You do have an indirect control over the results, but you do not have a complete control over the results. So karmani evaha adhikarahate ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hedurubhohu. Then what is the fourth clause? If you do not have control over the results, then what I decide, I'm not going to invest the money. I'm going to keep that in my saving account. What would be your result? Only that 30%. You will not achieve anything. So don't get addicted or get connected to inaction, because then you're just spoiling the entire opportunity. So this is the sutra, or this is the mantra for the efficient living. So because typically what people does, you do have control over the action, and they do not put a lot of effort on that action. The only thing you can do to improve your result is do your action to your best of your ability. So focus where you have control and leave the rest to God. Do all your due diligence and do the action to the best of your ability. You will expect a result, but you do not have an obsession about a particular outcome. That's all. This is what is the Karma Yoga is. So it is very important to understand Karma Yoga in this way. So karmani evaha adhikaraha te ma phaleshu kadajana. Because somebody wanted me to do the Sandhi Vicheda. That is why all these words are apart. Ma karma phala hedu puhu ma te sangaha astu akarmani. This is what it means. So there are 3 sentences in this verse. Your choice is in action only, never in the results thereof. That is the first point. Second point, do not be the author, do not consider yourself to be the author of the action. So mapu means ma karma phala hetuhu. And then what? Mate sangosta karmani. Do not attach to the inaction. This is the 3 phrases of the Karma Yoga. Any question on the verses? Otherwise, we'll go a little bit further down.
Does this apply to everybody, every profession?
Every profession, absolutely.
So how does the doctors go with this belief?
Doctors go with the belief, right? Because absolutely, let's take that example. A person comes to a doctor's office, where exactly the doctor has choice. Doctor
to
has
treat him,
yeah,
or not treat him?
No. Yeah, but of course, means what type of treatment has to be given to that person? It is in whose hand?
Doctor's hand.
Doctor's hand. But once you give the medication, whether that patient is going to recover or not, is that in his hand?
No.
What the doctor can do, he can use all the references. He can consult with other doctors. He can consult with the medical profession. He can check the history. He can rely on the knowledge from the intelligent sources and make the best assumption and treat. That's it. And then how the means we all know that, and that risk is there in the medical field. Every doctor wants every surgery to be successful, but sometimes what happens, the problem is where what happens is, suppose the doctor is anxious, too much anxious about the result. A normal patient comes to the doctor's surgical room, he can do his job properly where he has control. Let's say that the doctor has to do the surgery on his father. What is going to happen?
He's emotionally attached, so he cannot do this job.
So where he has control, he will not be able to do, right? Remember what Karma Yoga tells? You do have complete control on your action. So he may not be able to do. Why? Because he is obsessed with the result. Because he cannot take the other result. So when he is obsessed, what we fail to do is, we fail to execute what is in our control, what is in our hand. And when we fail to execute what is in our hand and what is in our control, naturally it will affect the result. So this, if you want to understand this in a detailed fashion, remember the discussion we had on the karma theory. So when we discussed the karma theory, we said that the output, let's say that Y is the output, and that output is determined by, say, multiple factors, X1, X2, and X3, let's say. And what my effort is X1, and somebody else's effort is X2, and there is some unknown result, which is X3. And understand that my choice or my control is only on that X1. So if I don't do that X1, naturally the result will be bad. But understand that even if I do that X1 properly, sometimes these hidden variables, unknown factors, we call it as karma, and that can impact the result. So recognizing this unknown variable, only thing you can do is what? Pray to Ishvara. Understand that the whole result will be created. You are not the author of the result. Understand that Ishvara is the author of the results. That's why the Karma Yoga goes extremely close with the Bhakti Yoga. Because when you are a Karma Yogi, you believe in the universal intelligent order of the universe. What is that intelligent order of the universe? Nothing will happen without a reason. So if you do your best effort and in spite of that, you do not get the result, understand that, remember that karmic current that is coming. So the prayatna can sometimes overcome it, but sometimes the prayatna may not be good enough. So accept that as the will of the universal intelligence and understanding, with an understanding that, yeah, it's for my own benefit, and move on rather than getting obsessed with the result. So this is the essence of the Karma Yoga. I have to tell you that I had seen this in multiple leadership seminars, management seminars, quoting exactly the same thing. One book I can refer is, I mentioned in the previous Gita Vedanta class also, Search Inside Yourself, a very popular book written by, I forgot the author's name. It is a Google's curriculum on emotion, means their curriculum for the leadership and managers. So this course is offered by Google to improve the productivity of their employees. And there is a chapter on mindfulness. So there, this topic is discussed extremely in detail. You may see that it could be a copy from Bhagavad Gita. He tells that, okay, if you get attached to the result, you will not get the result at all. So there is a beautiful explanation. I've quoted a lot of book so far. But I would say, if you want to read one book out of all the book I called out, please read this book end to end, cover to cover. Read this book called Search Inside Yourself. This book has a lot of value, and you would see, like I was quoting a meditation technique the other day from Tripura Rahasya. That is ditto. It is there in this book. I can show you that, but of course they don't give any credit to any of these books. But naturally, these sources are coming from these books, Bhagavad Gita type books. So this verse, please by heart this verse. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadajana ma karma phala hedurubho ma te sango stvakarmani. So that is this sutras are highlighted. Your choice or control is only on the action. The word adhikara here means only choice or your right. That means right means it is not, it is your control, I would say. The actions you perform, you have complete control or the right. And no control over the result. That doesn't mean that Krishna never said that don't take the result. Did he? No. You have to take the results. But you do not have control over it. There is a lot of difference between you renounce the result and saying that you do not have control over the result. Krishna said you do not have control over the results. That's it. And people, all these half-baked teaching, that teaching propagated this as you do not have a choice over the result. So which is, no, you do not have any right over the result. So renounce your result. So go to work, give the salary to the boss. Go invest money in the stock market and leave it. No result. That is not what it tells. And don't consider yourself as the author of the results. You are the author of your action, not the results. The God or the Ishvara is the author of the results. And don't get attached to inaction, because prayatna, your own effort, is also a contributor to the result. So the only way you can influence the result is doing what you have in your control. So that's why let there be no attachment to inaction. So this is the essence of Karma Yoga. Please keep this definition in your mind, because we need this in the third chapter. And forget about the third chapter. You need this in the life. This is such a life-changing message. Any other comments? Anybody wants to add anything? Have you ever came across this, or any other interpretation? Have you heard of this, or any interesting comments? Anybody want to share?
Right, Rajesh, the book you mentioned, Search Inside Yourself, is that by
Search Inside Yourself.
Cheng Meng Ten?
Correct. That's the book.
Sounds good.
So essence of Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga's advantage is typically what happens. I'm so much obsessed with my results because I'm so much addicted or confined to my little ego. Right? Why that doctor gets so much attached to his father. That is why he is there. So Karma Yoga gives an opportunity for you to expand from where you are to a higher level. These are all side benefit. Means the biggest benefit is it is going to make you efficient in your activity. It is going to make you stress-free in your activity. So what exactly is this ego? Actually, I came across a brilliant definition on what is ego. This definition is given by three scientists, H.G. Wells, Julian Huxley, and G.P. Wells. These three were British neurologists. So they defined this ego as it might be a convenient provisional delusion in the evolution with a strategic value. So this ego should be there at the beginning of your evolution. But the more you mature, the more you evolve, these scientists say that this ego will be expanded. Then only you become an human being. So this is not directly related to Karma Yoga, but I just wanted to show you what exactly in the beginning stages of the neurology, this was the thought. So Karma Yoga will help you to expand that. It helps you to accelerate your emotional cycle, meaning the growth, the evolutionary growth. It helps you to grow as an individual. Typically what happens? See, if there is what is the difference between a auto rickshaw and a very high-powered engine car? The auto rickshaw make a huge noise. And what is the maximum speed? 35 kilometers per hour, right? Maximum. Or 60 kilometers per hour maximum. But a good car, right? A good car, it can go to 150 miles, 160 miles. What would be the noise? Zero noise. So typically human beings are like that. When we do some work, we make a lot of noise, cries, and make sure that the entire world, oh, this is how all these things will come. But efficient work will not come out. So silent masters like a Vivekananda working, nobody knows. Like great achievers, when you look at them, you can see that how they work so efficiently. And this is very important. One more observation. I don't know, in India, especially in Kerala, I see this a lot. When somebody passes away, people say that this guy was a karma yogi, like an industrialist in your local town. A lot of people during their after the death, they condolence message say that this fellow is a karma yogi. Yeah, he is a hard worker, I accept. But karma yogi means the person who follows this lifestyle. So most of the time, such descriptions are completely wrong. Karma yogi means a person who understands where I have control, a person who is not obsessed with the result, a person who recognizes that lifestyle and stress-free working. So there is a tendency in a lot of people that to equate somebody as a karma yogi who is a hard-working person. Karma yogi is a hard-working person, but not all hard-working person are karma yogis. Please keep that in mind. We need to have that clarity. Got it, right? Got the difference. Excellent. So this Karma Yoga, Swami Vivekananda has made a lot of talk on Karma Yoga. So this is the secret of the spiritual progress and material success. Remember, in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, Shankaracharya tells, right? What is this dharma? The laws given by the Bhagavad Gita. He said, Praninam Sachat Abhyudaya Nishreya Sa Heduhu. A lifestyle that helps the individual to gain the highest spiritual goal, one side. On the other side, achieve their socio-economic welfare. So Karma Yoga is going to help you to grow spiritually, and also it helps you to achieve your material goal. In other words, it is the secret of the art of living. And act means it is act with an inspirational mood. So this Karma Yoga was a most favorite topic of two great freedom fighters of India, Mahatma Gandhi and Balagangadhara Tilak. Mahatma Gandhi's book on Bhagavad Gita itself is known as Anasakti Yoga. Anasakti Yoga means how to work hard without getting obsessed with the result. That is his entire focus, right? And even in Search Inside Yourself, this guy calls out Mahatma Gandhi, how efficiently he works without obsessed with the result. So that's very important. So Tilak, his Gita Rahasya is mainly focused on the Karma Yoga. So this Karma Yoga is such an important topic. And this verse gives, probably you cannot do anything more on this, but we have to go to the practice of the Karma Yoga a little bit more in detail, which we will come across in chapter 3 and 4. Any questions? Any other comments? Beautiful. So please pay attention to this verse and please try to get the full meaning. Means, remember I said I will call out 18 verses and this is one of them. This verse is one of the most important verse of the Bhagavad Gita. This verse is one of the most important inspiring message for anybody. No modern management or leadership theory goes against this. This is very important. Anybody want to share any experience or comments or any other thoughts on this verse? Okay.
Rajesh, just one quick comment.
Yes, Radha.
So basically, when you say that we have to shouldn't be attached to the results, right? So basically, isn't it something like that kind of non-attachment is what is it? Isn't it a part of that self-realization? Like we have to go to that place where we understand we are not the mind, we are not the body, but we are more than that. We are the Atma. So basically, the Karma Yogi has to be a self-realized person. Is that what again it is?
No, because Karma Yoga is the first step to that self-realization. So right now, you are not a self-realized master. Still, you can practice Karma Yoga. But I get your question, right? So let's understand two things. One is, what exactly is the spiritual path? The first step is, I said, ultimately, you need knowledge. Without knowledge, you cannot gain the moksha or the self-realization. Moksha typically is getting identified with the correct self. So how do I know my real nature? It is only through knowledge. But this knowledge, I'm not in a position to gain that knowledge till my mind is pure and till my mind is stable. So the first step in a spiritual prescription is, how do I flesh out all the impurities from my mind? And Karma Yoga is the means. Karma Yoga's goal is Anta Karana Shuddhi, the cleansing of your mind. So now you may ask, right, how do you do Karma Yoga? And we will see that in chapter 3. How do you act without, I would prefer to use the word obsession rather than attachment. So in the next verse, we are going to talk a little bit about that. But on chapter 3, we will see how to do Karma Yoga, how to convert your action into a yoga. How do you convert your ordinary action into a yoga spirit? We will see that. So we have to understand what are the different types of karma and what karmas you have to avoid and what karmas you have to accept and how do you perform that karma. In simple definition, Karma Yoga's definition is, it is proper work with proper attitude. In this particular verse, Krishna referred about the attitude. But how do you gain that attitude? It is given in the 3rd chapter. So to summarize, Karma Yoga, yes, means one need not be self-realized to practice Karma Yoga. In fact, it is the first set of practice. And how to practice Karma Yoga, we will see in the beginning of the 3rd chapter.
Thanks, Rajesh.
Okay. So let's move to the verse 48. Very popular verse again. This is the first time Krishna is going to define what is yoga. So let's listen. Manu, could you please chant?
Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate.
It's a brilliant verse. Yoga is defined in the last portion of this verse. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Know that yoga is said to be what? samatvam, equanimity of the mind. Brilliant and most comprehensive definition of yoga. It is your equanimity of the mind. The stability means the mind that is not siddhi, asiddhi, samo bhuktva. Like a mind that won't get extremely excited when you gain a success. A mind that is going to a depressed mode when you get a failure. The ability of the mind to withstand the ups and downs of the life, that mental state is known as yoga. Brilliant definition. So he tells, yogastaha kuru karmani, perform your action established in yoga. He didn't say that don't perform your action. You have to perform all the action in a different lifestyle, with a different attitude. Yogastaha kuru karmani, perform your action in the spirit of yoga. And what exactly you have to renounce? Sangam, without this obsession. Sangam is obsession, that is the definition. Sangam tektva dhananjaya. He didn't say that bhalam tektva dhananjaya. He said sangam tektva dhananjaya. Perform your action, but detach yourself from the obsession. And then how do you, when you tektva means when you renounce the sangam or obsession, sithya sithyu samo bhuktva. With the success and failure means you be stable, have a uniform attitude. Don't get too much elevated with the success. Don't get too much depressed on the failure. Because remember, I told you the definition of, the popular definition of Vivekananda, who is a successful person. Remember what exactly it is? A person who can successfully face the failure is capable of bringing success in his life. That's it. So samatvam yoga uchyati. And he defines yoga as this mental state. Again, very popular. Means throughout the Gita, you will see 5 definitions of yoga. And the second chapter is going to give that 3 definition. You will see very similar definition, or sometimes exactly equal definition of yoga in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So the same definition is given here. So yogastaha kuru karmani, perform the action establishing in yoga. Sangam tektva dhananjaya, renounce your obsession. Siddhi asiddhi samo bhuktva, like treat, be stable with respect to the success and failure. And this equanimity of the mind is known as yoga. So yoga is not standing on one leg. Yoga is not holding your breath for some time. Of course, these are practices that are going to help you. Now you may ask me, right? So when you talk yoga, it's a very generic term. There are different types of yoga. You have karma yoga, you have bhakti yoga, you have hatha yoga, you have kundalini yoga. The goal of all yogas are almost the same. The goal of all yoga is essentially a stable and a pure mind. That's the yoga. So yogaha samadhihi, Patanjali tells. Yogaha samadhihi. Krishna also tells in the verse 53 of the second chapter. Samadhi means what? It's an optimal, stable mental state. That's all samadhi. Sama again means equanimity. Sama means equal. Thi means mind. A stable mind is samadhi. A well-placed mental state is known as samadhi. A well-placed mental state is known as samadhi. Right? So sometimes what happens, see, the external events will trigger some chemicals in my mind. And what happens? This external event will trigger some chemicals in your mind and the mind becomes unstable. And when you operate from that mental state, your feeling, your words or your actions will not be proper. And the first step in the spiritual journey is gain control over your mental activities. Comes to the very popular, most popular definition of yoga. Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. Ability to control my mental activities is yoga. 6th chapter, Krishna defines that. Yatro uparavate chittam niruddham yoga seveya. Ability to control the mental activities is yoga. Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. 2nd sutra of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So there is a beautiful story. In ancient China, people saw one guy is riding a horse. So the person was asked, "Where are you going?" He said, "Sir, I don't know. Where the horse is taking me, I'm going." Typically, this is a Zen story, Zen Buddhism story, a brilliant story that connects with yoga. Typically, what happens? Where the mind is taking me, I do it. If the mind is telling me to shout, I shout. If the mind is telling me to cry, I cry. Who needs to control? Who is controlling whom? Am I controlling the mind? Mind is a gadget. Am I controlling the gadget, or is the gadget controlling me? Am I using the phone, or the phone is using me? And look at your own kids nowadays. You know that how much they're addicted with these gadgets. You don't have to go anywhere. Everybody is telling me the same story. That is the biggest concern everybody has during this lockdown period. So this is the problem. So yoga is a set of spiritual practices. It could be bhakti, it could be karma, it could be hatha, but all these spiritual practice, the goal or the objective of the spiritual practice is what? To gain control over this mental activities. And I was doing a course from New York University. Gina, I will tell you, this is a good course for you also. This is a course which tells yoga and physiology. So this course is conducted by New York State University, and this is available in Coursera. It's a beautiful course. Actually, what it does is it talks about all your physiological component, right from a cell health, your homeostasis, the stability of the mind, everything, and how the practice of yoga can help you to achieve that stability. What is the biggest, one of the greatest capacity of the human being is that stability. Like there is something in your brain, which controls and regulate the temperature, body temperature, something that controls your blood pressure, something controls your metabolism, something controls your, everything is properly controlled. That's the biggest achievement of the human physiology level. That is the greatest achievement. But here yoga goes one step further. Like on an emotional level, how do you gain that homeostasis, that stability? That is also means talked as yoga. So this scope of this verse and the implication of this verse is far-reaching, and it is really beneficial. We all should do a lot of practice on this particular verse, and we need to contemplate upon this. So let's continue. Yogastaha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Dhananjaya means what? The possessor of wealth. Possessor of wealth, it is a popular name known for Arjuna because he brought a lot of wealth into the country. So a person who generates a lot of wealth for himself or the country is known as Dhananjaya. So Krishna tells, you brought a lot of external wealth for the country. But the greatest wealth is what? Your own mind. So he's telling, better practice this. If you want to be called as Dhananjaya, better practice it. So this is just by the way, because in Mahabharata you can see that this context sensitiveness is how the name used in Vyasa, the name used by Vyasa in each of these verses, extremely context sensitive. So that's why Dhananjaya. Then he tells, Siddhi asithyur samo bhuktva, samaha bhuktva, take it equally, samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is known as samatvam, the equanimity of the mind. So the first sentence is, O Dhananjaya, means give up your obsession for the fruits of action and treat siddhi and asiddhi and perform your actions. Yogastaha kuru karmani, perform your action. Sangam, by renouncing the obsession. Then what? Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva, treat the success and failure with stable mind. And samatvam yoga uchyate, this evenness of the mind is known as yoga. Very popular definition. And a lot of yoga teachers, they don't know these words. So that's the interesting thing. So this is the first time, means you can see the formal definition of yoga in any textbooks. This is one of the most important words. So let's go a little bit further. Perform action being established in yoga and renowned sangha obsessions. So what is this obsession? Typically, I feel that I plus X is going to make me happy. I myself alone is not capable of wellness or happiness. I feel that this money or that house or this car or that particular weather or this coffee, I plus something is going to bring happiness to me. So detachment means what? You are not renouncing that object, but you are renouncing that X. Take the notion out from yourself that X is going to make you more happy. It cannot be. It cannot be. Even if it gives you some happiness, that happiness will be temporary. And I don't have to explain to you that. You all know that. You all know that. When you are sick, so I was talking to somebody, like, this is a very sad story. Like, I was in a hospital a couple of years back. I had to stay there for a few days for a close family member of myself. In that ward, I saw a lot of people. They used to say, if it is a normal life, I'm so happy. So I was telling myself, I'm so normal right now, but am I happy? A person who is suffering from corona right now, what would be his point of view? Oh God, I don't know. I don't need anything. If this disease, if I get out of this disease, I'm happy. A person who do not have green card. The other day, somebody was talking to me. Oh my God, this H1 transfer and H1 renewal is going to be so complicated. I would not ask God anything further if I get a green card. Then I was replying to him, if that is the case, I would have been so happy now. That's not, I didn't tell him, but I was thinking, this is the thing. The unmarried wants to get married. And the married wants to get unmarried. All these means we are not happy with the situations or objects. Please understand that. So the detachment means renouncing that dependency on X, not renouncing X, but renouncing that dependency. So this gives an attitude of equanimity. So the evenness of mind, what we are talking here is the tranquility of mental composure in facing the pairs of opposite. This definition is given by Swami Chinmayananda. Brilliant definition. The tranquility of mental composure in facing all pairs of opposite. So defined thus, the term yoga indicates that a special condition of the mind in which it is naturally in a stable equilibrium state. This is what I was just explaining earlier. Like in the case of human being, your physiology is regulated by the natural evolution. The nature, when you evolved from a unicellular organization or the organism to a plant, to an animal, and to a reptile and a mammal, and finally to a human being, that stability was ensured by the nature. So this thermostatus, that state where your body temperature is controlled, the blood pressure is controlled, the metabolism is controlled, no such system like that on the emotional front. And the evolution, the natural evolution of the body may give you that strength, but you may have to wait another million years. So this technique of yoga is going to give you acceleration, right? You can go beyond, you can accelerate your organic evolution. And I mentioned this also in one of the earlier lectures. So after this Charles Darwin's famous paper on theory of evolution, exactly after 100 years, there was a scientific conference in Chicago. So one of the scientists, which I quoted earlier, was Julian Huxley, Sir Julian Huxley. He came there and he presented a paper. That is, the whole theme of his paper was, see, organic evolution can take its one stage of evolution. The second stage of evolution per him is, it is called a psychic evolution. It's called a psychosocial evolution. It's the evolution of your mind. And that is what is being told by this yoga. This is very important. And typically we are so much attached to this ego. And sometimes what? You compromise. So you have to follow this yoga. That means your performance will be extremely high in the world outside. So there is a famous story in Mahabharata. There was a king called Sanjaya, not the Dhritarashtra Sanjaya, before that. And he was ruling somewhere in that Gandhara area, somewhere in Afghanistan. So he continuously got defeated in few what you call the wars. And he was so depressed. And his mother, you can see such a lot of mothers and wives and sisters in Mahabharata who inspire the people with a lot of such values. His mother's name was Vidula. She gives her a beautiful advice. He tells, Muhurtam Julitam Shreyam. Like, it is better to like a flame for a second rather than being a smoke for thousands of years. So you perform well, take the success and failure exactly like, and go and face the life. This is the message for all of us. And facing the life courageously and in front of the up and downs, you have to practice this. And the first thing you need to have for practicing this is belief in that absolute universal, intelligent, universal order of the universe. When you know that I'm in his hand, I will not be put down. Whatever happens to me is for my own benefit. Then I will have that control. I will have that courage. So naturally you can ask me now. Yeah, on a theory basis, I accept it. All of you tell me, 100%. Theoretically, what you are saying is right. Without this equanimity, I cannot perform well, you will say. But I'm programmed in such a way that whenever I see a situation, my mind goes out of my hand. So how do I program this samatvam in my mind? What spiritual practice I should undertake to get this stability? This is exactly what is the Karma Yoga practice, which we are going to see in the third chapter. So you have to follow a set of prescribed practice. Nobody is born with these skills. Of course, some people, depending upon evolution, they may have the natural positivity in them. But lot of time with practice, you can improve this or gain the skill. So my folded arms, my request to all of you is, before thinking about self-realization, before thinking about anything, please try to gain this skill. Without this skill, you cannot attain the spiritual realization. So the classes Gina is doing on Sunday morning, this is Hatha Yoga. These are simple, or means the pranayama and meditation. So those are very simple practices which can help you in this direction. That is one thing. Second thing is, I'm going to tell you a set of prescribed practice when we do get into the third chapter. Please practice that, because the benefit of that practice is this evenness of the mind, which will enable you to face any situation. So a couple of more points. So the recognition of this karma, you see, this is not possible without recognizing Ishvara. As I said, like when you recognize Ishvara, you know that whatever happens to you is Ishvara's prasada. When you see everything as Ishvara's prasada, at least that positive acceptance is there. Typically, a person act or react because of the likes and dislikes. So this Karma Yoga helps you to neutralize your Raga Dvesha. The Raga Dveshas will be there, but you can go beyond the Raga Dvesha. How? Chapter 3, like there are specific verses calling this out. So understand God's will. That is one easy way. That's why Karma Yoga means can be practiced as a Bhakti Yoga. If you take everything as a God's will, you will not generate these reaction. So then what happens is, Tulasi Ramayana, there is one more quote is there. Tulasi Ramayana, it is said that fools rejoice in prosperity and mourn in adversity, but a Karma Yogi remains tranquil in all circumstances. A famous quote by Hanuman, who is considered as one of the greatest Karma Yogi. This is in Tulasi Ramayana. So, a couple of other points. When we talk about Samatvam, that doesn't mean that you should not have any feeling. Absolutely, that is not the case. So an even-minded individual can handle it. That's it. So it's not that your mental state is exactly straight line. It may have ups and downs, but it will be always within that control limit. That is for sure. And one more quote, like there is a British Nobel Prize literature. His name is Kipling. So he tells, right, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, that means you're tranquil. This is from his poem, exactly the same concept. One more quote, Bhartrhari, one of our greatest Subhashita person. He has written a lot of Niti Shatakam, etc. He tells, you should be like a sun. You should be like a sun. What is the greatest advantage of sun? When you look at Rohitji's background, you can see a sunset. When the sun is rising, what is the color? Red. When the sun is going to sunset, what is the color? Still red. The sun takes its same. First cases, he is rising up. That time also red. And he goes down, that time also is the same color. You should be like that. This is what Bhartrhari tells. All his quotes are exactly like that. I love these Bhartrhari's quotes. They're fantastic. Other one I said, right, the other day, like, like the world's idea is bully the weak and the parley with the strong. He gives a beautiful example. When the wind is small, means when the fire is small, what is going to happen? The wind will put out that fire. But when the fire is large, the same wind which used to put out the fire, it will take you to all the nearby houses. So be strong. That is the message. So this Bhartrhari tells you should be like a sun. The Astamana Surya is also red color. Sun gives the same color. And the Udaya Surya also is same color. So you should be like that. So have this equanimity of mind, and that is what is 48. So we are at 6 o'clock. So we can close here. But these two verses are very important. Please contemplate upon that. Any questions, please post that in the group. And any questions? Otherwise, we can have Anu chant the verse one more time. Okay. So Anu, would you mind chanting verse from 47 to 50 once again?
कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भूः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि योगस्थः कुरु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्यसिद्ध्योः समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते दूरेण ह्यमरं कर्म बुद्धियोगात् धनञ्जय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणाः फलहेतवः बुद्धियुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृतदुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युज्यस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
This is fantastic. One more definition of yoga is coming in the next verse. It is yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Ability to identify and perform appropriate action is also yoga. Because, mind you, the definition of karma yoga is proper work with proper attitude. Okay, so stay safe, and actually, let's hope and pray that the situation will become better soon, and hopefully we can continue. Typically we used to stop the class during the summertime, but since because of lockdown, I think everybody is free, right? We can continue these sessions. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. Thank you.
Rajesh.
Rajesh ji.
Thank you.